right. So Barbie and Oppenheimer. I'm really excited to talk about this because nothing has really gotten into the cultural zeitgeist. At least a movie hasn't really gotten into the cultural zeitgeist and has kind of been the center of everything. It feels like for the past week, like Barbie and Oppenheimer has been. This is a really exciting time. Like people are at the movies. This, I believe it was like 300 million domestically or something like that due to Barbie and Oppenheimer. That's like, I think the second highest, something like that, post Avengers Endgame. That's a really incredible feat. Greta Gerwig did this off the success of course, Lady Bird and Little Women. That kind of proved her as a brand and director that people liked. And then she was able to get a big project like this in Barbie. And now she essentially has a blank check. She will be able to direct whatever movie she wants. This is the highest grossing movie for any female director opening weekend. Uh, some of you hear that and you're like, but what about Captain Marvel? Co-directed by a man in that movie. So this is the first solo direction, I think, is probably the best way to categorize that. Although if you did include Captain Marvel, because it was as well directed by a woman, that would actually be number one. But solo direction, this is Greta Gerwig, and she kind of really just became the premier American filmmaker. There's not that many people contending for the title right now. I think you have her. I think you have Jordan Peele. And in terms of big blockbuster successes, I guess that's really it in terms of American, because, Nolan's not an American director. Uh, some of our more premier ones, like Spielberg and Scorsese, are much older. These really feel like the true definitive voices in a generation. And with that, we're going to be talking about their Oscar success, specifically with Barbie, who Greta Gerwig has been a Academy darling with Lady Bird and Little Women. And then, of course, we're talking Oppenheimer, Christopher Nolan, who had a big year with Dunkirk. And then Tenet really didn't do anything at that year's Oscars, besides, I think it had some below the line categories. But so we're going to be talking about that all today and where I see the race. And it's only in contention right now with Oppenheimer and Barbie. I'm not worrying about other movies like Past Lives or Across the Spider-Verse or Air or anything that's about to come out. I am solely focusing on Barbie and Oppenheimer's chances. So let's start with, I think, the one that is probably just, I feel like a far more sure lock on this, and I feel more confident in some of my predictions about what this film's success is going to look like at the Academy Awards, I should say. So let's start with Oppenheimer real quick. The Oppenheimer Oscar predictions. So I'm going to just break down some of the categories. There are, if I'm correct, I think there are 23 categories currently at the Academy Awards. And I'm just going to go each film and basically say what I think they're going to get nominated for. So we're going to start below the line and then we'll get to above the line. And let's just start with Oppenheimer. There are a handful of locks in this category. And in fact, there might be a handful of lock wins in this category. Obviously, it's way too early to say that, but there's a few in this that are just kind of in excellent position to just win. So we'll talk about all that. And we'll also talk about films or nominations that could happen, what that number would mean in the history of the Academy Award. So in the terms of Oppenheimer, let's just start with a few just obvious ones. The first one is visual effects. Now, I was trying to judge if this film would actually get into visual effects. The Trinity test sequence is so spectacular that I think that alone would probably push it in there, along with the fact that there are visual effects used in the movie and there is never a shot of CGI. I think they've marketed this well. And also, and this is kind of again tying into the current strikes going on, Dune 2 is not actually now confirmed for sure to be coming out in October. If these strikes continue and Zendaya and Timothy Chalamet and Austin Butler and Florence Pugh can't promote this movie, Warner Brothers may back out and be like, we're going to delay Dune until April is what I was hearing. I think Jermaine Lucier reported on that a few days ago, and I've heard other similar things. So if Dune 2 is out, that really makes the visual effects category so much more open. And, you look at some of the other categories and films going up for this, you don't really see any of the Marvel films having success this year. I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 may get nominated. I don't see prediction. I don't really see Ant-Man or the Marvels later on this year getting nominations. You could see, like, I guess in theory, a Flash nomination, but I thought that film looked bad. So you're looking at it, it's just like there's not a lot of clear cut, this will get a visual effects nominations. Some of the big tentpole films this summer, their visual effects are wonky. I mean, I guess Transformers could get the nomination, but will it? It's all these questions. Little Mermaid has questions on the visual effects. All these big budget, you know, tentpoles, like they had moments of just bad visual effects in them, where Oppenheimer is outstanding throughout. So I think visual effects is a safe category for it to get nominated. The other one, and this one I'm going to call, this is way too early to be saying this, but I'm going to put the lock in right now. If I could bet it in Vegas, I would bet it. So I'm writing that down. It is a lock. If I could make this bet and bet like $100 on it right now, I would, because I feel really confident in this one getting a nomination. And the win, film editing. I think Oppenheimer is so well edited and it's such an integral part to the movie's success that I just feel great about not only this one taking the nomination. I think it kind of wins this category in Storm. Now, obviously, way too early, but I do think what Christopher Nolan and his team achieves, and I'm actually going to look up the Oppenheimer editor right now because they deserve a lot of praise, and I kind of also just want to know what they've done before. So this film is edited by Jennifer Lame, and she has done Francis Ha, which was Noah Baumbach's film. He co-directed uh sorry, not he co-wrote Barbie. uh they have also worked on Manchester by the Sea, Midsommar, Hereditary, Marriage Story. She did Tenet, and she did Black Panther Wakanda Forever. I think this is her win, and it doesn't look like she's ever won this award before. So yeah, I just feel great about Jennifer Lame's chances this year at not only, like I said, getting the nomination for film editing, but winning it. If you, like I said, if I can make a bet right now in Vegas, I'd put $100 down on film editing for Oppenheimer to win. So those are two categories I feel confident in. Here's a few other ones I feel confident in: cinematography, production design, sound. Sound is a no-brainer. If you've watched specifically the Trinity test in this movie, it's a no question that this film will get sound. Cinematography, it's again big budget. It's very, the 70 millimeter formatting and how much that drove people to go see the film at an IMAX in 70 millimeter film. That's going to help its cinematography chances. Production design, having to bring Los Alamos to life. Those are all nominations I feel great about. Best original score, Ludwig coming back for Christopher Nolan. He previously scored the film Tenet. I think this score is incredible. He may even be the front runner to win, but I never know how to predict score, especially because you can. The fun thing about scores, you could have a terrible movie that has an incredible score that could get nominated. So that's always the challenge of trying to predict score. What other categories? So those are kind of the below the lines. And so right now, I just listed off 6 nominations that I feel great about, with one even being a lock at this moment. 6 is a lot, but I keep going. Best adapted screenplay. This is based on a book called American Prometheus, which was a Pulitzer Prize winner in like 2005, maybe 2006. This is certainly going to get nominated for best adapted screenplay. I don't see any roles where it doesn't. So that's another nomination. And this is where the film is going to rack up, because typically what happens with some of these bigger budget films, I think this happened in the case of Dunkirk for sure, which was again also Nolan, is Dunkirk got a lot of nominations, but it didn't really get acting nominations. What this film is going to do, as I predict, I think it is a sure lock that 2 nominations for actors will come out of this film. I think Best Supporting Actor, RDJ, and Best Actor, Cillian Murphy, are sure things. They are sure things to get the nominations. At this moment, I actually even have another lock. I think RDJ, Robert Downey Jr., is going to win this category. I think he is going to get the Best Supporting Actor win. He's never won it before. He's been nominated a few times for Tropic Thunder, which was a supporting performance, and for Charlie Chaplin in the documentary Chaplin, which he was nominated the same year Denzel was nominated for Malcolm X, the Son of the Woman year. I just think this is going to be RDJ's win for sure. And Cillian Murphy could even win this category as well. They're both very impressive. I feel really good about calling the lock on RDJ. Two more categories. If you've already seen it, we're now at 9 nominations. And typically, a film like this, a big budget biography that's also part courtroom drama slash part conspiracy thriller. I don't see any world where this film's success, how much this has been championed, how much it's being embraced by the community. I just heard a story about how this film had its premiere at the Academy screenings. It was one of the films screened last week in LA for the Academy or Academy members, and it was like lines around the block to get into this screening. So I just see this as good. Just the Academy is already embracing this movie. That will give it the staying power to go from July to the ceremony, which I believe is in March of next year. So I just don't see any world where it doesn't get Best Director and Best Picture. So that is already 11 nominations. If it scored all 11 nominations, it would put it in the class of Everything Everywhere All at Once, Joker, which is bizarre it got there, Life of Pi, Godfather Part 1 and Part 2, Saving Private Ryan, Aviator, Return of the King, Hugo. And I think you're starting to notice a trend with these movies, and it's a very important trend to do. When you're talking about these films that get crazy double-digit amount of nominations, it's because you not only have to get a lot of above the line, which is actors, directors, Best Picture, you have to get a handful of below the lines. That's why certain categories or certain types of movies, genres, I should say, do so well at the Academy Awards. This is why musicals like La La Land does so well. This is why visual achievements like Titanic and Return of the King do so well, because they can get those Best Director, Best Picture nominations and also basically sweep the below the lines categories. Now, if you notice, 11's a lot, but it doesn't quite hit the 14, which was set by La La Land or Titanic, which Titanic has this crazy number, 14 nominations, 11 wins, and All About Eve, which has 14 nominations, 6 wins. It's not quite hitting that 14 number, which is the highest number that has ever been hit by a film. The most nominations a film has ever had was 14. One thing to note about this is there is a little bit of things that should be, what's it called? They need an asterisk on them. Sound used to be split up by, I think it was sound design and sound editing. It's just now called Best Sound. So a film was able to get one extra nomination. So I'm not positive, I didn't look this up, but my guess is a film like Return of the King or The Aviator probably got both. In the case of Oppenheimer, it's only going to get one. So do take that with a grain of salt. The interesting thing is I put in 11 categories that I feel like are surefire locks for Oppenheimer. I have 4 more categories that I could perform in. Makeup and hairstyling. Now, personally, to me, I don't think the makeup and hairstyling is what I remember of Oppenheimer, especially when we're going to compare it to Barbie in a second. But you know how these kind of nominations go. Academy members start getting a little trigger happy. They just start putting Oppenheimer down for everything below the line. It is a case in point scenario where you could just see they might pull off the Robert Downey Jr. Look at how he looks in the film. They might be able to look at just some of the set period time of the movie and get at that 12th nomination in makeup and hairstyling. I don't feel good about it. I wouldn't predict it to get there, but crazier things have happened. Same with costume design. For the most part, these characters are wearing suits. But again, it's the same reason I just had. There is a certain talent, not even a certain, there is a lot of talent to bringing a 1940s picture where everyone's wearing suits, making it look dynamic, and especially bringing J. Robert Oppenheimer to life in his iconic suit and hat. The fact that they recreated certain scenes with very famous people, there could be a chance for it. I just don't really see it in any world that it gets a costume design, especially with some of the other contenders that will be in this category, including Barbie. Spoiler alert, we'll get there in a second. Two other nominations that I didn't know how to feel with. I'll say the one that I find less likely than the other one. Best supporting actor, there is a case that Matt Damon could get it. Matt Damon also co-starred in, actually, I guess technically he starred in Air this year. So there could be the case in point where it's just like, we're going to reward him for the career that he had in 2023. He was so good in Air. He's great in Oppenheimer. We'll just kind of get him there. And it could also very much help his chances if films like, let's see, like if for some reason, which it doesn't sound like it's going to be, but if Killers of the Flower Moon gets delayed, De Niro and Jesse Plemons are no longer in this category. If the color purple gets delayed, Coleman Domingo is no longer in this category. There's just so many actors where if their movie ends up getting delayed, maybe this category thins out significantly and Damon could get a surprise nomination. I wouldn't even call it a surprise because I think he's quite good in it. The only other guy that I really see having a good case to make at this point of the year, besides we'll get to Ryan Gosling again in a second, spoilers alert, is John Magaro from Past Lives. There is a chance that he could get the nomination as well. So what I'm trying to say is best supporting actor could really, and like all these categories, it could be really influenced by what films do or do not. And if a heavy hitter like Killers of the Flower Moon or Napoleon or The Killer gets delayed and maybe they had one nomination in there, all of a sudden it's anyone's game. I don't predict at this moment that Damon will get that nomination. I do think they are going to, I think Universal is going to focus on Robert Downey Jr., but you never know. The one that I'm not sure about, this one I'm kind of going 50-50. And at this moment, I am going to lean more yes than no, is Best Supporting Actress for Emily Blunt. She has never been nominated for an Academy Award before. This would be a weird one for her to get nominated in because it's not a big role, but she does get one really showy scene. She gets one or two showy scenes. That's unfair to her. She is quite good in this movie, but she is the wife character in this movie, and it's kind of a thankless role for a majority of it. If she can score this nomination, I just, there is always a chance uh, that I think she is in threat. She is Emily Blunt. I don't think it's impossible for her. Even at this moment, I feel like I'm more leaning towards her getting the nomination. So that would put it at 11 locks, one potential bubble, which I'm leaning towards yes, and then three that are on the edge. So that could be a total of four more nominations, putting at 15. So there is a good chance Oppenheimer could break the 14 record and get to 15. I just don't think so. I think they would need makeup and hairstyling or costume design, not even need or. They would need both. To get that number, they would have to get both. And then they'd have to also score supporting actress and actor, which again, I think those are more on the table, but that's a tough challenge. So I do realistically think this number for Oppenheimer, and again, we'll see how the race comes out. I think it is somewhere more closer to 11 to 13. That's the range that I predict for Oppenheimer. I don't see it getting to 15, but it is certainly on the table. Now, let's jump over to Barbie, which I've been seeing a lot of bold predictions for Barbie. I'll just say that. There were people who I was listening to Sean Fennessy over at the Big Picture, him and Amanda Dobbins and Joanna Robinson were talking about Barbie today. This is a movie that I also quite like. Fennessy said that he thought this film would get Best Picture, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Director nominations. I'm not as bullish on it, but I mean, it's not impossible. Again, with these strikes going on, all of a sudden, any of these films get delayed a year. Anything's up in the tables. I don't know if I get it. That, and we'll talk about that in a second. But let's talk about the ones that I do feel like are fringe nominations. Actually, let's talk about the ones that I feel more confident in. I think that's probably a more interesting way to frame this discussion to start. There are four categories that I think are locks for Barbie. I think costume design is undoubtedly a lock. I think makeup and hairstyling is undoubtedly a lock. I think production design is a lock. And I think best original song for I'm Just Ken is a lock. I think those are four categories where you will see Barbie perform at this year's Academy Awards. I should say next year because the ceremony won't happen until 2024. They're all below the lines. For Barbie to really get some big nominations, it would have to score some of the acting ones. And I have it. I have 7 nominations that in some scenario I could see it. And I'll lay out those 7 scenarios. There is a chance Barbie could pick up 2 more song nominations. I do not predict in any world that Barbie has 3 of the 5 nominations, but it could certainly have 2 of the 5. I don't think that's crazy. I think Billie Eilish, the song What Was I Made For, is probably the more likely of the 2 that I'm about to mention. But Pink by Lizzo is a really important song in that movie. It's kind of the framing device that allows the first 10 minutes to be as kooky and bananas and sets the world as well as it does. So I think both those are in contention. I would lean more positively towards Billie Eilish's song getting there because it's definitely the more emotional, heartfelt scene in the movie, even if I might enjoy Lizzo's song more. But anyway, I don't think all 3 of these songs, I don't think I'm Just Ken, Pink, or What Was I Made For. I don't think it's going to get 3 of the 5. 2 of the 5, though, feel I think that's possible. I think that's very plausible, actually. The other categories that I have it for as a possibility, adapted screenplay, I've heard a lot of thoughts about. I this because this is Greta Gerwig and this is Noah Baumbach. They're 2 Academy darlings. Obviously, Baumbach did quite well for himself with Marriage Story a few years ago. Gerwig has been nominated for Little Women and Lady Bird, one of them being an original screenplay, the other one being adapted screenplay. I don't think this is unlikely. It's just here's the issue. People get excited for a movie. You start hearing people talking about on film Twitter, oh, well, this is obviously going to get nominated. Here's a challenge. If you do follow any of these accounts of people who are like, this is a guaranteed nomination, throughout the year, just start counting how many of them have this as a guaranteed nomination. So if they're like, oh, Barbie is for sure going to get adapted or is going to get an adapted screenplay nomination, wait a few months and see what else they say is for sure going to get an adapted screenplay nomination because there are 5 nominations possible. I typically see it's just like, okay, but what are you cutting? You have 7 right now. Like only 5 are going to get the nominations. That's why I'm far more bullish on the idea of Barbie getting, an adapted screenplay. Because here, listen, I just off the top of my head, these are films that, again, assuming they come out, could easily be in the adapted screenplay conversation. Obviously, we had Oppenheimer, which I already said I think will be there and is at this moment the front runner. You have Killers of the Flower Moon, which is an adapted screenplay, which is Scorsese, obviously. You have Zone of Interest, which is Jonathan Glazer's new movie that premiered at, I want to say it was, what film festival happened where Killers of the Flower Moon, whatever film festival that was. It was a Europe film festival that happened in May, and I can't believe I'm blanking on it. It was not Venice. Maybe it was Venice. Who knows? Whatever film festival I'm trying to say. Oh my God. It's like on the top of my tongue. It's the kind of Cannes, not Cannes. Is it Cannes? Yeah, it's Cannes. It was the Cannes Film Festival where it premiered. Jonathan Glazer's Zone of Interest did very well there, and it was kind of the big film along with Killers of the Flower Moon that people left that festival talking about. So you already have Oppenheimer, Killers of the Flower Moon, Zone of Interest. Then you also have other ones like The Color Purple could easily be receiving a nomination. Yorgos Lanthimos's Poor Things. David Fincher's The Killer is based on a French graphic novel. You have Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Then you have films that we really just don't know anything about at this moment, including Priscilla and Michael Mann's Return, Ferrari. These films are going to premiere at Venice in some of these films, I should say, are going to premiere at Venice in the next month. Those are all of a sudden, I just listed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 films that could easily be in contention. And I didn't even list Barbie yet. So that's where I'm just like, there will eventually need to be cuts. And I just don't know if a $150 million movie about a toy, which again, I really like, and I think has some incredible writing in it and some incredible, just like dialogue rich scenes, like America Ferrera's monologue in this movie, I think is really well written. It's going to be hard for the Academy to get over their bias. So at this moment, I just don't really see an adapted screenplay. Obviously, if things shake up or some of these movies come out and they're bad, let's revisit this conversation maybe in November and we might have a far better idea. The other four categories that I see people being listed for: best supporting actor for Ryan Gosling. I just kind of listed all the supporting actors for when I was making the case for Damon. You had RDJ, Robert De Niro, Coleman Domingo, Sean Magaro, past lives, Jesse Plemons, Matt Damon, all that. I Gosling's a little bit more interesting to me. My issue with this is the Academy never tends to be in favor of comedy. Now, true, I get that Gosling's been a pretty good favorite for them. I don't really see them going for this broad comedic performance, especially if the optics end up being that he is the only one of these cast members to get a nomination. If he gets it over Robbie, I think that's actually a really bad look. So I would assume the studio would be positioning Robbie more than it would be positioning Ryan Gosling, but you never know. Warner Brothers will go after what they view as their best chance at getting a nomination. I'm skeptical right now of Gosling. Although I will say at this moment in this time, I think the only three cases this year of people who could really be in this conversation for films that generally most people have seen at this point. I'm not talking about The Killers of the Flower Moon, which only showed at cons. I'm talking like ones that released to theaters. Now, I think Past Lives performer Magaro could easily get it. I think Robert Downey Jr. is certainly in play, and I think Gosling is in that conversation. So he is in the conversation for now. I just don't know if he's staying there. Where adapted screenplay, I'm already kind of skeptical uh if Barbie is in that conversation as it exists right now. Uh Best actress, I don't know what to do with Best Actress. My logic is Tom Cruise missed the nomination last year for Top Gun Maverick, and I just think that genre bias is going to be working against Margot Robbie, even though she's really fantastic in this movie. It's going to be a hard nomination for her to get. She's certainly an Academy darling. There's no doubt that Margot Robbie could get a nomination, and this is going to be a big movie. And by the end of the year, it might be the biggest movie that has come out. That's certainly in play. Maybe that does power it. And then it feels too similar to the Tom Cruise, thank you for saving cinema. Maybe you'll get the honor as a producer for this film for Best Picture, but realistically, like just actress, that's a tough hill to climb. And again, the Academy's just never really gone with genre movies, especially ones that they view a little bit more kiddish, for better or for worse. And to be honest, I think it's for worse. But at that moment, that's kind of why I think I'm discounting Margot Robbie really getting a nomination. The last two, I was trying to think, could Greta Gerwig get the Best Director nomination? I think it's far more likely that she gets the screenplay more than she gets the Best Director. But again, could this kind of be the Top Gun Maverick case where Jonathan, what is his name? What is his name? Who directed Top Gun? John Kaczynski. That is Top Gun Maverick's director. Could this be the case where Gerwig finds similar success? Certainly, I don't think it's, again, illogical. It is just the case of you're going to be going up against, for sure, here are two names that you are going to be in contention with, for sure. Martin Scorsese, Christopher Nolan. Those two are for sure. Past Lives could just continue just kind of trucking along and continue being kind of this just like great story. People are really loving this film. Past Lives director is certainly in play. Then again, you have Jonathan Glazer's Zone of Interest, which by all accounts, I've heard his direction is incredible. So he's in the conversation. Then you have the films we don't know about. You have The Color Purple, Poor Things, The Killer, Ferrari. So that's Michael Mann, David Fincher, Yorgos Lanthimos. Like those are some big directors already. Then of course there's always like Emerald Ferreira, no, promising young women director, which is, let me Google that name right now. Emerald Fennell, I believe is how you pronounce her name. She has a film coming out this year. It's just, I don't know. It's a hard one to imagine when you already know that two of the five spots, and probably honestly three of the five slots, are going to go to Christopher Nolan, Martin Scorsese, Jonathan Glazer. So there's now two spots open, and your competition is going to include Emerald, David Fincher, Yorgos Lanthimos, Michael Mann, which I'm not really counting Michael Mann in this until people actually see Ferrari. If that movie's great, and Ridley Scott even has Napoleon. Like, if that movie's great, what does the race become? So you already have three who kind of feel like locks. You're fighting for two positions. I just don't like the math in your favor at this point. And then the last one is Best Picture. Barbie could actually get a Best Picture nomination. Of all the ones that I listed, adapted screenplay, supporting actress, director, and then choose songs, besides one of the two songs being nominated, I think Best Picture is actually very in the race for Barbie. I think this could, again, I keep comparing it to Top Gun Maverick. I feel like some of the rhetoric being used by voters slash by reviewers is kind of that it has this Top Gun Maverick, thank you for saving movies appeal to it. That's why I don't think this is impossible. And that's where I could see them rewarding Barbie is in a Best Picture. There's obviously 10 slots, so there's more nominations to go around. There are going to be films delayed for sure. And especially if a film like Dune 2 gets pushed by Warner Brothers, the studio that made Barbie, all of a sudden, maybe that money that they were going to spend pushing Dune 2 for an Academy Award for Best Picture win slash even nomination, you're going to see that same fervor and energy being pushed to Barbie instead. So I do think Best Picture being 10 nominations, I do think it actually has a fairly good chance. But with that all said, you see how weird this race is going to be this year, because obviously it's a race where we just don't know much. And what we do know is so confusing because of the ongoing strikes, which Hollywood put on themselves. This is the studio's fault. Incomplete. Like, do not get this wrong. Everything that makes these movies special, Oppenheimer and Barbie, it fundamentally starts with the scripts. So thank you for the writers for that. The actors have to bring these scripts to life. So thank you for the actors. And I've heard some misconception on the actors where it's just like, oh, these actors make hundreds of millions of dollars every month. Like, why should we care about them striking? Majority of actors do not make that money. Majority of writers are not Aaron Sorkin. They are not Martin Scorsese. They are not making this type of money. Majority of actors and writers are struggling, and the system of Hollywood and the studios are currently working to cut that little money that they already get. And don't forget, David Zaslav, Bob Iger, they've all gotten pay raises during this. And when during COVID, their profits are continuing to increase, while the actors, while the writers, while the editors, while the visual effects crews, they're all getting screwed. That's why I'm in support of SAG, and that's why I'm in support of WGA. And honestly, if you love movies, you should be too. There is no question of who the bad guy is in this. The bad guys are Netflix, they are Disney, they are Warner Brothers, they are every studio currently that is working in their own self-interest to destabilize the writers and to destabilize the actors' guilds. Literally, one of the executives said their plan to basically beat this writer's strike was, let's kind of keep this going, and eventually people will start losing their houses and go hungry. That is their plan, and that is what they want to achieve. There is no question who the bad guy is right now. It's the studios, it's people like Iger, it's people like Zaslav. That's why I stand with the Writers and Actors Guild. With that all said, that is my episode for today. Thank you all for watching. I'll probably actually be trying to do some sort of weekly episode every Friday. We'll see how well I can keep that, but I do know I'll be covering some film festivals. I will not be able to go to Venice, but I will be at least able to talk about Venice and preview it on this channel. Thank you all for watching. My name is Ben Friedman here from the Beniverse Movie Channel. Take care and bye-bye.